Even though Super Mario Odyssey is only a little more than a year old, the game has already been investigated more thoroughly than most other games before it. The game has been beaten with the minimum amount of captures, without coins, without jumping, without Cappy. Recently, it even has been beaten without seeing. I personally always find it fascinating when games are robbed of core mechanics and how a playthrough of a game can drastically change just by ignoring some of its mechanics. So recently, I wondered, could it be possible to beat Odyssey without walking? Or to be more precise, what is the absolute minimum amount of joystick inputs required to beat the game? As it turns out, routing this is actually surprisingly complicated. So complicated that I can't possibly cover everything going on in a single video. Because of this, we're going to do this in 2 parts. Today, we'll take a look at all kingdoms up to the Lost Kingdom. And next time, we'll take a look at the other 7 kingdoms. And then we will finally know what the minimum amount of left joystick uses required to beat Super Mario Odyssey is. So are you ready? Let's do this! Okay, so first things first, what are the rules? Basically everything is allowed but the left joystick. Multiplayer and moving as Cappy is allowed, collecting coins isn't forbidden, even assist mode is fine, as long as it somehow allows us to get rid of evil left joystick users. For anyone wondering how we're going to walk around without walking, that's actually surprisingly simple. First and most importantly, we're still able to roll and to dive like we normally do, which is our main form of movement during the entire run. Rolls and dives allow us to cover a lot of distance fast, but are pretty unprecise. If we ever want to position ourselves precisely, however, we can use the backflip. If we jump immediately after a landing, we're able to preserve our momentum and are even able to perform triple jumps this way. Though getting the timing down so that Mario doesn't lose all his speed after jumping is way trickier than it looks. We're even able to wall jump, since wall jumps in Odyssey work as soon as we have momentum into a certain direction. Next, there is the first person view. If we press the right joystick, then we enter the incredibly helpful, magical first person view. While in this mode, we are able to enjoy and to control the amazing view by using the right joystick or motion controls. And as soon as we leave this little extra mode, Mario keeps facing into the direction, which allows us to perform important tasks, like turning around. There is only a slight problem, however. As soon as we're close to a wall or in an area with a fixed camera, the awesome first person mode is unavailable to us, and turning around turns into a very difficult task. Lastly, we often can make use of the many captures in the game. A lot of captured enemies grant us the ability to gain height or to move forward just by using motion controls. In short, we have tons and tons of options to move around without the left joystick. For the most part, this makes this run extremely relaxing regarding the execution of inputs. It's more like a gigantic routing puzzle, because the main problem today is to obtain the required amount of moons to be able to leave each and every kingdom. Unfortunately, tons of moons are unavailable to us by default, because even though we have many movement options, there are certain things that are impossible to do for us, like 2D sections or areas that require us to play as certain captures. Each kingdom requires us to collect a certain amount of moons in order to unlock the next one. We'll investigate the first 7 kingdoms today, and while we're at it, we're going to count the amount of instances where the game sadly forces us to stupidly use the left joystick. Just one more thing. I'm almost certain that there are several areas where we're simply forced to use the left joystick, so we won't get our no joystick counter to 0 today. I'm not done routing the whole game yet, but my absolute minimum goal to not consider this routing to be a failure would be to get this number below 10. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start in the Cap Kingdom. The game starts and our hero, called Mario, is at a truly horrific point in his life. Not only did his girlfriend just got kidnapped again by a gigantic turtle who, although I don't think this could ever be legally valid, now wants to marry her. But he also got beaten up pretty badly. He lost the hat he's been wearing for over 30 years, and he finds himself completely broken in a strange place, far from home. To make matters even worse today, he isn't even allowed to move around in a normal way. It looks as if there is no hope left for a heroic plumber. But luckily, things are about to turn to the better for him, as soon as he meets this head ghost, whose girlfriend conveniently was kidnapped too. So the Cat Kingdom is absolutely no problem for us, until it is a huge problem. We're able to reach the huge head tower with no problems. We can reach and defeat the first of many killer rabbit bosses, and there is nothing here that is even remotely challenging. Sadly, however, there is the capture tutorial. So the game wants us to mind control one of the frogs here, and then to use the frog's absurd jumping skills to make it to the top of the head. The frog sadly doesn't move if we don't give him an input from the left joystick, so that's no option. But skipping the frog is no option either, because we aren't able to reach the top of this platform without using a joystick. There is nothing we can do here. The very first kingdom sadly already features the very first area, where the dumb left joystick is unavoidable. Hopefully we're in better luck in the next kingdom. The beautiful Cascade Kingdom. We need 5 power moons to repair the Odyssey here. The only way to get 5 moons is to defeat Madame Brutal at the top of the kingdom first, because most of the moons only become available after the fight. Defeating the terrible rabbit aunt is absolutely possible. The problem is reaching her. There is this horrible 2D section blocking the path up. 2D platforming sections are a huge problem for a very important cause, because we can't move in 2D. The only way to move forward in 2D is by, well, moving. And moving is the single thing we're trying to avoid today. So the intended way towards the boss is locked for us. There are several other ways to make it to the top, most importantly the dino skip. But all of those options are locked for us as well, since all of them require the joystick in one way or another. Sadly, I wasn't able to find a solution to this little problem. But just because I wasn't able to find a solution doesn't necessarily mean there is none. Huge, enormous and gigantic thanks to YouTuber Icays, who took a look at our little dilemma. He does a lot of interesting Odyssey challenges over at his wonderful YouTube channel, including no cappy and no jump challenges, and he's insanely good at the game. So what trick did our savior Icays use to get rid of this left joystick input? Well, he basically outsmarted the game. He did something incredibly clever. He made heavy use of the multiplayer mode. As soon as we enable multiplayer, the right Joy-Con can be used to control Cappy. Cappy is capable of capturing enemies, collecting nasty stuff like coins, and can activate checkpoints, even if there is no plumber attached to it. Icays used this in a really clever way. He positioned himself at this little ledge, did 2 Cappy jumps to gain height, did a Cappy upwards throw, and at the highest point of the throw, he took control over Cappy and flew up to the higher platform. Now all there is left to do is to blindly move around this Cappy up there until we hit the checkpoint flag. If we now kill our favorite plumber, we lose 10 coins, which is a price I'm more than happy to pay, and afterwards we respawn at the checkpoint flag we just activated without ever reaching the platform. This allows us to obtain the 5 moons required to leave the Cap Kingdom without ever moving. Hooray! Next up is the Sand Kingdom, and this kingdom is the kingdom where the routing starts to become really complicated. There are 69 basic moons in the Sand Kingdom, and we need to find a way to grab 16 of them to proceed. At first glance, it looks as if we got more than enough moon options to leave the kingdom. But there is a slight problem here. The vast majority of those moons are unavailable to us, because we can't progress in the Sand Kingdom story. We can't make it onto the top of this tower, because of the next dumb 2D section. A lot of Sand Kingdom areas only become available after we reach this tower. Therefore, the entire Moai section, the pyramid, the part in the cave, and lots of other moons are not available at this point in the story, which drastically reduces our moon options. So there are 13 moons we're able to grab without huge complications. Moons like the ones that are obtained by ground pounding, the ones just sitting in the open, the one in the bird, 2 in the bullet bill challenge room, and a couple of other moons. But once we got all of them, we face a problem. We can't buy a moon, because we can't position ourselves in a way so that we're able to talk to the shopkeeper. We can't use the Jaxi, we can't move as a cactus, the Walk the Line moon appeared to be rather complicated to obtain as well. We can't get any moons in the Moai challenge room because the first person view is disabled there, and so on. So routing the 3 missing moons cost me and Mario a lot of headache, in quite a literal sense, you'll see in a second. So the thing is the following: if Mario hits his surprisingly resilient head against the wall, he doesn't land exactly on the spot he was before the little wall mishap happened. I'm not entirely sure how the game calculates how many pixels Mario's new position is off from his previous one, but the difference is incredibly small and basically not noticeable after a single headbutt. But as it turns out, if we chain dozens and dozens of headbutts together, we're able to move without using the joystick. So before we take a look at how we grab the 3 missing moons, I just quickly want to use this occasion for a public apology. So, sorry Mario. Sorry Mario for everything that I and many others have done to you in the past, and especially sorry for what is about to happen to you. I know this is going to seem especially unfair to you. I know you're probably going to wonder why we just can't use the dumb joystick, and it's probably going to hurt. But the day will come when you will understand why we're doing this to you. It's all for science, you know? or at least for edutainment. So the first moon we grab is the one usually obtained by crouching through the back door into the shop. If we position ourselves in such a way close to the entrance, then we are able to roll into the small spot. We can't use the first person view here to change our orientation, but we're able to roll. If we roll, Mario first hits his head against the wall, afterwards he hits his head against the ceiling, and then our plumber shakes his head in agony, a couple of pixels closer to the entrance. All we have to do is to repeat this neat procedure a couple of 100 times and we make it into the loading zone. Hooray! Sadly, this moon wasn't the worst thing that's going to happen to Mario today, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The next moon we're able to grab is the one in the room with the ground pound puzzle thingy. So in order to obtain this moon, we have to ground pound here. Reaching this spot is a big problem, however. The first person view is disabled in this room, which means we have to get creative with walls and Mario's head. Once again. So whenever we roll over a sloped surface, we change our orientation. Luckily for us, the pipe to the left here is a sloped surface. Sadly, however, we start exactly on the same axis as the middle of the pipe, which means we can't change orientation on the pipe. But luckily, we're once again able to hit Mario's head against the wall until he moves a little bit. Then we're able to roll on the sloped pipe, which changes our momentum even further and allows us to make progress into the room. There is this Sand Kingdom native who is willing to talk to us. Talking changes our orientation as well. So all that's left to do is to slowly orientate ourselves in the right direction by talking with this nice Sand Kingdom native until we're able to backflip to the position of the moon. Hooray! So the last moon we grab is this one, floating above the quicksand. Once again, first person view is disabled here. So we somehow need to find a way to make it to the moon. Luckily, doing this is surprisingly simple. We just hit Mario's head against this wall. Over and over again. Hundreds of times. Yep, doing this takes ages, but every time Mario crashes into the wall, we very slowly make progress towards the moon. This was the last moon we needed in Sand Kingdom, which means that this kingdom is possible without the left joystick. Hooray! Next up, Lake Kingdom. The Lake Kingdom luckily features fewer problems than Sand, but it features one pretty big problem right at the beginning. The intended way to proceed into the kingdom is to climb up here, to go through this passage, to dive a bit lit and to make it to the first boss this way. Sadly, we can't do this because the passage is blocked by one of Bowser's nastiest minions. There is a creature of almost undescribable horror blocking our path forwards, a horrible being of harmless appearance but unspeakable terror behind the facade. Our path forward is blocked by a zipper. Zippers are the natural enemy of anyone who wants to play a game without the joystick, because as it is known, zippers only unzip if the left joystick is moved. So this passage is definitely blocked for us. The whole zipper problem can usually be easily avoided just by doing a bit of platforming. Sadly, we aren't able to make it up there by platforming, because wall jumping off the wall is not possible for us. If those were our only options, I'd clearly prefer failure by wall jump over failure by zipper. But luckily, there is another way to make it up there, the Goombas. If we ground pound underwater, then jump and throw the second best cap ever featured in a video game upwards, we capture one of the Goombas, which teleports us upwards and allows us to reach this area without the joystick. The brutal battle here is kind of tricky since we are incredibly slow. It is absolutely possible, but far from being trivial, which really leaves me a little bit worried for the brutal fights later in the game. Other than that, getting the required moons in the Lake Kingdom without the left joystick is no problem at all. Hooray! 3 kingdoms left for us to investigate today. We'll do them a bit out of order now. Let's take a look at my favorite kingdom in the game first, the Lost Kingdom. Well, there really isn't much going on here. We allow Cappy to be stolen and steal him back. Moving on the lower layer of the kingdom is incredibly annoying because it's surprisingly simple to take an unwanted bath in the surprisingly lethal water here, but other than that, the Lost Kingdom features almost no problems. Oh, just don't go for this moon. It's a trap. Once we made it into this hole, we can't leave it again. Neither are we able to grab the moon. The only way to get out of this little hole again without moving is to reboot the console. But other than that, it's easily possible to complete the Lost Kingdom without a single unenjoyable joystick incident. Only 2 kingdoms left to investigate. Next, Cloud. Cloud Kingdom is a quick one, because there is nothing here other than a single boss fight against our wedding planning antagonist. So the question is, are we able to batter Bowser here? And the answer is yes. Yes, we are. Once we grab the punchy white head, we keep our whole moveset. Even though we were ahead triple our size, we still keep the ability to roll, long jump, backflip and to dive. Although this is highly unrealistic, it makes this fight absolutely possible without running around. Which means there is only one last kingdom left. The Wooded Kingdom. So while Bowser tries to steal all the flowers for his upcoming wedding, we have to find 16 powerful moons to proceed. As soon as we defeat the first boss, there are more than enough moons available for us here. Finding 16 moons isn't a big problem then. Neither is the boss fight especially problematic. The real problem here is reaching the boss. We have to find a way to make it to the top of the tower. So first things first, we can't walk as a nut. That's a problem because the nut maze can only be entered by raising a platform while cosplaying as a nut. We can't get to the entrance as a nut and the nuts don't jump into this part, so the nut maze is locked for us. This means that we have to jump over this gap here. In a normal playthrough that's absolutely no problem, but we sadly have no easy way to get enough momentum to make the jump. There are 2 nut enemies that relentlessly attack us here, while we try to get a good angle, which is incredibly annoying. The real problem here, however, is that this bottomless pit sadly has a bottom. Every time we try to make this jump and fail, we end up in the deeper woods part. Luckily, I'm a huge fan of nuts and therefore love the deeper woods part. Here the game wants us to carry a nut into one of the seed ponds. Since we aren't able to move while carrying, we always have to precisely platform in front of the nut, pick it up and then to throw it a bit into the direction we want the nut to go. A very calming task. Luckily, there is nothing down here that could make this task tedious or anything. It's just a slow, relaxing nutravaganza with nothing that could go wrong. Hooray! Anyway, so whenever we fail this jump, it takes about 5 minutes to get back to the position we previously were at. This makes it extremely tedious to search for a good setup for the jump. It drove me nuts, to be honest. So I was stuck here for about 2 hours, unable to find a way to cross the gap. I was really close to giving up. But then Icays once again came out of nowhere and saved the day. So we were chatting a little bit and I told him that I was currently stuck here. It took him literally 6 minutes to record a clip of him doing this, asking if this is the jump I was stuck on. Yes it is. Turns out this gap can be jumped over by keeping our momentum. Now we only have to find a way to make it atop the tower. The problem here are the magical vine bridges. Those sadly disappear faster than we are able to reorientate. Luckily, solving this problem turned out to be way easier than I first thought. All that we have to do here is to ignore the vines entirely and to go to the left. That was the last problem in Wooded. And the last problem for today. No joystick inputs in Wooded either. So far, we only were forced to use the evil left stick once. Hooray! So with that being said, thanks for watching this little video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and maybe you feel especially nuts today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope that all of you have a wonderful day and to see you soon. Goodbye!